It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. I see a whole bunch of folks on there from streaming live on our website. I see Clarksville and Mustang. Somebody just disappeared in California. See Branson out there and some folks over there up in the Chicago area. Folks over there near Maine. Thanks for joining with us this morning. I appreciate you. I know I hear that question all the time. How do you know where we are? Well, trust me, I don't have any of the capabilities the NSA has, but I can just see your city. I can't see who you are. So thank you for joining with us. I appreciate it. Thanks for riding with us. We're also broadcasting live on Patriot FB. It's kind of like a Facebook clone for Patriots. I would encourage you to go over there and join that group if that's at all possible for you. You have no censorship there, unlike the other Facebook, which, by the way, saw a headline out there for the second year in a row. Facebook paid no taxes. Isn't that interesting? Funny how the corporatocracies always get away without having to pay any taxes, isn't it? I mean, they're willing to suck you dry for 50% plus when you count state and federal taxes, and then, you know, if you add in what you're paying, gasoline and food and clothing and all the other stuff that you got to buy, and then we get to stick you one more time fees like your automobile registration and all of the other nonsense that you have to pay, personal taxes, property taxes. I mean, literally, folks, we're being taxed to death, and they squander it so rapidly and so abusively. Never fails to amaze me. We're also going to be running this program tonight on 99.3 Big Country. That is a great Patriot radio station in Houston, Missouri, and they are a great group of fellas. I am very appreciative of the work that they've put forth to help make sure that America's Voice Now is broadcast locally in our area, geographic footprint. I have a lot of listeners that catch the show there from midnight to 2. Always happy to have you folks on board, and very, very appreciative of Rooster Radio and their efforts to make sure that our local listeners have an opportunity to hear us. By the way, if you are interested, we have some excellent advertising opportunities for you on there. So if you'd like to give me an email, shoot me an email about that, I'll be more than happy to talk to you. If you're a business and you would like to advertise, we have some excellent advertising opportunities for you, not only on America's Voice Now show that runs from midnight to 2 there, but also for the regular run-of-day station on the station as well. Okay, so my email address, by the way, is mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's Mike at americasvoicenow.org. If you are tracking us this morning on Patriot Facebook or patriotfb.com, you're welcome to give a call into the show. You can call us live on our listen line at 417-204-5141. Okay, enough bookkeeping. Let's make sure that we're talking about the 4 topics for today. 1, budget RINO sellouts. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 9 RepubliCrats in the Senate who, as usual, have betrayed the American people, their constituents, and their states, and our nation. Saxby Chambliss, with a name like Saxby, I'm not surprised. He's a Republican from Georgia. Susan Collins from Maine. She always does exactly what the good Democrats tell her to do. Orrin Hatch from Utah. Hey, Orrin, what are you thinking? What's the matter for you, huh? Hoeven from North Dakota. Would they pay you, Hoeven? Or did they just decide to keep a secret quiet? Isaacson, another Republican from Georgia. So you got two Georgian Republicans who voted in favor of stripping our military of their pensions. Meanwhile, by the way, for the record, they didn't touch the pensions of the civilian workers for the federal government. Well, isn't that just special? Johnson, Wisconsin, who came out afterwards and said, we promise we're going to fix it. Well, then why'd you vote for it in the first place, knucklehead? You don't fix it after the negotiations are over. When the term of the deal is cut and the contract's been agreed to, you don't go back later and change the terms. You change them before you put your pen to paper. John McCain. You know, there's something about John McCain that just turns my stomach. Every time I see a picture of this guy, I want to go heave in a corner somewhere. Every time I hear him talk, the guy just makes me ill. Everything out of his mouth is an excuse. Everything out of his mouth is a justification and a rationale for behavior that is and conduct that is unbecoming an American. Forget that you're a senator. Forget that you are representing millions of people. Forget that you're representing a state. John McCain is an embarrassment to the human race. Murkowski from Alaska. You know, this is the woman that fought so hard to get that seat in Alaska, and now she votes like a Democrat. And let's be honest. You know, Alaska's only got, let's say, 500,000 people, folks. Quarter of them live in Anchorage, and they've got a huge military base up there. I'd be surprised if this woman is afraid to go home. Portman from Ohio. This is the guy who last time they were saying he'd be a great presidential run. He should run for president. What an embarrassing and shameful group these people are. Our second topic is going to talk about I'm going to just beat the tar out of these guys for the next 15 minutes. Our NSA panel report has come back. Backfire. The president appointed 5 individuals, and I've got their 46 recommendations right here. And, you know, this group reads like a who's who, first of all, of insiders. I mean, it's a pretty scary crew to begin with. Richard Clark, Michael Morrell, Jeffrey Stone, Cass Sunstein, and Peter Swire. I wouldn't let Cass Sunstein walk my dog. I wouldn't even let Cass Sunstein clean up after my dog. But they came out with 46 recommendations that, quite frankly, have backfired on the president. He put these people in place because they were insiders. And for whatever reason, they've actually come out with a report that trashes a lot of what he's been doing, which is a good thing. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But don't get your hopes up yet. First of all, the president has to agree that these are the right recommendations for him to follow, which is unlikely. He's going to accept them all. In fact, he's already said he's not going to accept a couple of them. And then on top of that, our third topic is going to be the 2014 National Defense Authorization Act and the new NSA that they're building into that document to replace this NSA, because this one's reputation is trashed. So they're going to discard it. They're going to change the leadership, claim they've shut it all down, and then they're going to do it anyway under a different group. Watch. So there's a new NSA being born right now as they're killing off the old. You watch and see. Let me tell you something. Tyranny never voluntarily gives up, and you can bet these people won't either. Our fourth and final topic is Obama keeps losing in court. So what is it we got to do to get rid of this tyrant? I mean, he loses in court every time he goes. Why can't we get rid of this guy? So we're going to talk about those topics. Let's start with this Senate vote thing. You know, Ryan, and by the way, now they're pushing for Ryan to be the next guy to save the Republican Party during the immigration battle. You know, I am so sick of Congress people and senators who act as if they are our betters, who act as if they have some knowledge and inside information that we don't, and that they should be voting on our behalf for things that they clearly know we don't accept and stand for. The Senate voted 64 to 36 to pass this budget deal, created by Paul Ryan, which, by the way, he lied about. He lied about the military aspect of it, and then later came out and apologized. Well, guess what? That's a tactic of Obama, Mr. Paul Ryan. You lie about something to get it passed and approved, and then you apologize later. What is that, the old adage that it's easier to get forgiveness than permission? I don't want a government that operates and runs like that. The worst part is that this thing doesn't do anything to slow down the growth of government. Based on all the numbers they gave us, and by the way, Ryan was playing a little double counting game there. He was working with a broken abacus, and he was betraying the spirit of this thing, which was supposed to reduce the sequester. Well, the vast majority of the sequester is still in place, as it should be, quite frankly. But they shouldn't be cutting the money from the military budget. They should be cutting it from all of this other nonsense. You know, Tom Coburn put out that book the other day, you know, about waste and fraud and abuse. And he's showing, I don't know, $30 billion worth of ridiculously idiotic spending. So if they got to recover $4 billion to pay our military people who were given a promise that if they stayed in the military for 20 years, they would get this funding. They didn't have a 401k. They didn't go into the private sector and work in the community like everybody else. They stayed there and did the nation's duty, and now you're going to give them the stick. Shameful. I mean, unmitigated evil behavior on both parties. Truth is, folks, you've heard me say it 1,000 times. I'm going to say it again. Neither of these parties represent us in any way, shape, or form. They are all self-serving. Every single one of them is abusive of your rights as an individual. I'm just disgusted. Obama held a high-tech talk the other day about this NSA reform thing, and he dragged all these high-tech companies in, and he kept trying to push it towards Obamacare, and they were rejecting him, saying, listen, we don't want to talk about your stupid Obamacare. We want to talk about this NSA spying because we're losing $35 billion in business because everybody in the world who's not in the United States is saying, you know what, your servers aren't safe and we're not putting data in your cloud. And they're going off and finding other business. $35 billion. What's the tax revenue on that? Well, I mean, under corporate rates, assuming that they actually pay taxes, which, you know, Facebook doesn't, neither do the most other companies, including General Electric, 59,000 page tax return, zero taxes paid. Zero. But assuming that it was, you know, that they were actually paying taxes of 30%, that would be $10 billion in revenue, tax revenue for the government. More than cover the problem for the military, wouldn't it? You see, the problem is these people are, all they're interested in is how do we pay off the people who have bought our allegiance. I'm embarrassed that they actually call them. These people give a bad name to Americans. They give a bad name to Republicans. They give a bad name to conservatives. They give a bad name to constitutional conservatives. 9 of them couldn't wait to get their vote in to sell us out. Unbelievable. So the reality is, here we are with the Senate vote. They've passed it. It's good for 2 years. 2 years, folks. So basically, we've lost complete control of any spending measures for the next 2 years. Obama's licking his chops because he's happy as a clam. He's got all this money to burn. And guess what? He's got no limits on how much more he can borrow in February. He's already borrowed $1 trillion between the last budget shutdown we had and this. or so far, and we haven't even hit the first of the year yet. We're $8 trillion in the hole, folks. And this guy's spending like a drunken sailor. And I apologize to the drunken sailors out there for putting you into the same ilk as this piece of garbage. The truth is, they're doing this now because they know that the midterms are coming up. They're going to make sure that there's no election year fight. That's the goal. Make themselves safe from you, from the voter. And that's the only time they ever pay any attention to you anyway. The only time they give any credibility or credence to you is just before November. When all of a sudden they're going around and they're telling you how much they care about you, and they're giving you a hug and telling you you're so important. And like battered children with the battered child syndrome, we keep loving and hugging our tormentor. How insane is that? I mean, really. And here's the worst part. In 2015, when this thing is expired and we have to do this all over again, well, then we're going to be in the throes of the presidential elections. So there'll be more reason for them to pull the wool over our eyes again. More chicanery, more skullduggery. This is assuming we actually get to 2015, by the way. Because at the economic scenario in the straits we're in right now, holy smoke. You know, the truth is, we're spending $1 billion more than we take in. $1 billion more than we take in. That's reprehensible. I saw a thing that, I mentioned this yesterday, I saw a thing with Reagan on the other day, and he was talking about how a budget deficit of $50 billion was out of control. I think he said 54 was the number. And this was before, of course, he became president. And he was on the Johnny Carson show. And he was, you know, aflame over this $54 billion. $54 billion. Folks, that's the rounding error on the Senate's lunch bill. That's the tip they gave the caterer. I mean, really. These guys lost $54 billion in the last week. They don't even know where it is. They're looking around, pulling up the corners of the rug and seeing if somebody dropped it there. I mean, we're spending $1 trillion. And by the way, the Fed just announced the other day they're going to cut back from $85 billion of debt monetization to $75 billion. We'll see what happens with the markets over that. But now they got to try to unwind the fact that they're holding $4.5 trillion themselves of our debt. 4.5. When Obama took office, by the way, it was only $0.5 trillion. So he's stuck them with $4 trillion. And it's money that doesn't really even exist. They make it up as they go along, and then they bill us interest on it. I mean, guys, it is the biggest Ponzi scheme that has ever been played in the history of the planet. These GOP people are just, I mean, grand old party? I'll tell you what, I think they think it means grand old poobah. I'm so disgusted. And you know, the old adage is going to come up in a couple of months. Well, I got to vote for the evil, the lesser of two evils. So I got to vote for the Republican. Because otherwise the Democrats are going to get the Senate again, and then they're going to get the House, and then Obama's going to have no limitations. And you know what? These pieces of trash in Washington are counting on you saying just that. We're safe because they don't have an alternative. Nobody dares give Obama a House and a Senate and a presidency and an unlimited budget. I mean, that would be like putting Charles Manson in the middle of an LSD factory with 100 girls and 50 knives. I mean, what the heck? How insane is that? He'd go to town. So Obama is sitting here. He's licking his chops because he just got this great deal. No caps, no limits. He can just spend, spend, spend. The Democrats are happy, even though they pretend not to be. I mean, the vast majority of the Republicans are happy because they don't have to do anything for the next 2 years now. They got cover. And the conservatives are out there, the true conservatives, what few there are livid. But they're in such a minority that they don't really have any power and authority. What's up, America? What the heck are we doing here? All right, we got a minute and a half or so before the break. A couple of things I want to bring to your attention. One, I'd like you to go and visit and support one of our advertisers, who is the Battery Station. They are located at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains. You can find them by going to the web to batterystation.com. You can call them at 417-257-7799. That's 417-257-7799. Kevin, the owner there, is a very, very excellent man. He is a patriot extraordinaire. He's a friend of mine. He's also a big supporter of this program. And this year, they are doing the gifting to the Reapers in Afghanistan. That's D Company 18 Cav. And they send off these Christmas packages to these guys that include everything from batteries and flashlights, which, of course, he's from the Battery Station, right? So he donates thousands of dollars worth of material and goods and product. They also carry a ton of other gear, by the way. If you ever want to visit a great store, go to the Battery Station. It's not just batteries, trust me. He's got everything in there from freeze-dried food. We have a bulk food co-op in there that's only open to our listenership. If you want to participate in that, you got to take advantage of it. Get over to see the Battery Station. But they also need things like food, like baby wipes and food packets, foil packets of tuna and salmon and chicken and beef and stuff like that. They mail that stuff over to our soldiers in Afghanistan. This is I think their 8th year doing this. And if you can help, if you can help, it would be very, very much appreciated. If you're not local and you can't drop off food or baby wipes, and by the way, everything's got to be unscented, then you can certainly give them a call, and you can do it by credit card. It's the Battery Station, and they're batterystation.com. You can email them at troops@batterystation.com, or you can call them at 417-257-7799. Let's make sure that we give our guys over there an opportunity to know that we're supporting them back home here. Even if you don't agree with the war in Afghanistan, they didn't start it. They're just finishing it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the NSA panel report, the backfire on President Hussein Obama. I'm going to give you some ideas on what that report looks like and what some of those recommendations were. We'll be back in just a moment. Stick with us. You're listening to America's Voice Now. That was all right, not all ride. But if you're riding with us this morning, I'm appreciative of it. Thank you. A lot of folks are streaming on our website this morning. They catch us live there every morning. You can also join the new patriotic Facebook. It's called Patriot FB. Patriot F like Foxtrot, B like Bravo. And you can join us there. We actually have a chat line where you can, once you're a registered member there, You can listen to the show live as it streams. If you're logged onto the page, there's a Listen Now button. It pops open a little player, and you can listen while you're out there working on the web or at work or whatever the case may be. If you're listening at work, you might want to wear headphones because, sometimes I'm not politically correct. So we wouldn't want you to get in trouble with your boss. There is a chat line there. You can talk with other members that are also streaming the show. And this is just like Facebook, but it's by invitation pretty much only. So please feel free to jump on board there. It's not only America's Voice Now. There's other shows all day long. There's Cowboy Logic Radio, America's Voice Now, J.J. McCartney Show, the Midnight Patriot Show at night from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. This is all Central Time, of course. So anyway, get to thepatriotfb.com, join up there. There's another great site that's similar to that. It's called Constitution Club, another great site. They promote and push heavily issues related to the Constitution and sheriffs and that kind of thing. A couple of things I want to make you aware of. The CSPOA, which is the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, they are putting together a new convention, which is going to be sheriffs only. And in this new convention, they're going to be building a resolution that will outline clear and specific terms of exactly what the nation will no longer tolerate from our national government. Now, the CSPOA is the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association. I was at their last event that they had here in Missouri, their last convention. This one that's coming up is not a public one. It's only open to law enforcement officers because they are going to draft this resolution. So what they are doing is they're looking for people to help them fund it. One of the ways that you can do that is they've taken all the books and DVDs on their website and cut the price in half. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is if you want to help these guys, and let me tell you, Sheriff Richard Mack and the crew over there are awesome, outstanding patriots. If you can obtain any of their materials, you can go, buy them on their website. It's 50% off. But here's a couple of cool ideas. Why don't you buy a book? I mean, he's got The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. It's $4, folks. $4. And he's got another one called The Proper Role of Law Enforcement. It's $3.50. So go on there and buy a couple of these books as Christmas gifts and go to your sheriff's office and hand him the book. Go to your local police department and hand them the book. If you know the head or a state police officer, if you know a county or a city police officer, give them that Proper Role of Law Enforcement book for $3.50. Buy 10 of them for $35 lousy dollars. I mean, you're going to spend that on lunch, right? So go over there and you can go to them by going to cspoa.org. That's Constitutional Sheriff Peace Officer Association. Charlie Sierra Papa Oscar Alpha.org. Make sure that you go over there, hit their store. They got all their books and DVDs until the end of the month on sale for half price. You can't do something that would be better in your own community than educate the law enforcement officers in your area, your peace officers. Those are the people that affect your life. Now, I know there's people out there that, there's cops out there and sheriffs out there who want nothing to do with it. They think their job is to do exactly as they're told. Well, Nuremberg was full of people like that. But the truth of the matter is, you can still educate those around you. And it doesn't have to be a specific chief or a sheriff. I mean, if you know if you know a cop, buy him the proper role of law enforcement. It'll educate him in a way which, is utterly astounding. Our job is to share and inform and educate, motivate, and activate people. Who better to educate and inform than the guys who are running around doing the day in and day out job of protecting us? Or, in the unlikely event that we don't educate them, oppressing us. I would rather at least know that I've given that guy a book that has explained to him his proper role as law enforcement, so that in the event something happens, he can't say, I didn't know. You could be his witness if he does say that and say, well, wait a second, you do know because I gave you the book that told you. Wouldn't that be a Benny? So anyway, make sure that you get over to the CSPOA. They're a great organization anyway. I always encourage people to participate and work with them, if at all possible. If you can help them in any way, shape, or form. I know Sheriff Richard Mack as a personal friend. He's been on my show a number of times. I've been to the convention. I work with them any way that I can because I think their work is so excellent. And I know this is not some kind of a scam. Mack does not make money at this stuff, guys. So, it's not like you have to worry about, all of these groups that are constantly dunning you for money. He's not like that. I mean, he will send you requests for it, but trust me, he's not making any money on this. They put these conventions on every year at their own cost and expense. So, all right, let's talk about this NSA power play. The president, based on Snowden's release of information, was dealt a fairly heavy blow, as we all know. And so he appointed 5 people to be this panel that was going to look at, what should we do, if anything? Should we restrict it? Should we expand it, expose it? What should we do? Well, interestingly enough, I think the number one phrase that came out of this thing that makes sense is that they deemed it not essential to preventing attacks. And they also deemed that it presents a lurking danger of abuse. Now, let's not give these people too much credit. They're all, they were handpicked by Obama to be his boys. And so, I don't think we want to go too far, but they made 46 specific recommendations. And Richard Clark, who is a member of the panel and an ABC News consultant, said, "We think there's no real need for the government to store data about people's telephone calls." What this recommendation related to was the fact that the data should be stored by, in this case, the carrier, Verizon or AT&T or Sprint or whoever your cell phone carrier is. Instead of the NSA sucking all this information up with a giant vacuum cleaner, the information should be stored in the carrier's databases. And in order for the NSA to gain access to it, they would have to go to the FISA court and get a specific court order to go after that specific person's record, rather than this, giant sucking sound of a vacuum throwing everybody's data in there where they can go through it whenever they want, however they want, in whatever, nefarious method they choose. They didn't trash this thing too badly, which I didn't expect. In fact, I'm surprised they came out with the recommendations they did. I thought they were going to whitewash it more. But don't get your hopes up, because the truth is I think they've got an alternative plan here. I'm going to talk about that in our next segment, which is under the 2014 National Defense Authorization Act. They're going to, there's a phoenix of tyranny that's going to rise from the ashes of this NSA morphed into a new one. So, I mean, look, let's be candid, folks. We know for a fact that tyrants don't give up power. And we shouldn't have the expectation that these particular tyrants are going to give up power either, right? I mean, that just doesn't go that way. Unfortunately. But, doesn't mean we can't try. So, one of the things the panel warned about is we cannot discount the risk, in light of the lessons of our own history, that at some point in the future, high-level government officials will decide that this massive database of extraordinarily sensitive private information is there for the plucking. Well, with all due respect, I think they've already plucked it, but okay. Sensenbrenner, the senator, called this dragnet collection of American phone records, and he's calling for an end to it. He says the panel reports that we recommend that Congress should end such storage and transition to a system in which that metadata is held privately for the government to query only when necessary for national security purposes. The report does add in there some language that I think is interesting. Americans must never make the mistake of wholly trusting our public officials. Well, if that's news to you, You must be the first-time listener, and maybe you just woke up and you're trying to rub the sleep out of your eyes because I don't know what's going on in the world. These guys had access to the highest levels of information, so there was no secrets kept from them. And as a result, they came out with a couple of things that were very startling, and I think really explains why Americans should be concerned. One, they made a determination that this thing has so little purpose to it that, in terms of combating terrorism, that only 12 tips, 12, were sent to the FBI in 2012. So in the whole of last year, they were only capable of, after digging through everybody's junk, they were only capable of sending 12 tips to the FBI. They can't even produce a single instance of one terrorist plot being thwarted directly as a result of this NSA program. Now, they threw out there at one point in time 54 or 65, I've forgotten what the number was, but whatever it was, it turned out that was a lie too, and it was a carefully couched one. What it was once the plot was uncovered, they went back in and found information that they could then use to prosecute them. But that's a whole different story. I mean, look, if we're into pre-crime here, ladies and gentlemen, then we may as well just give up the ghost the Republic's lost. There are very few pieces of data that have been collected in this program that have been useful. And that was from Clark, who was one of the panel members. Leahy, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, says, which I normally don't like this guy, the message to the NSA is now coming from every branch of government and from every corner of our nation. You have gone too far. This momentous report from the president's closest advisors is a vindication of the efforts of a bipartisan group of legislators. Here's where he does the back-patting crap, right? That has been working for years to protect Americans' privacy by reining in these intelligence authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a bald-faced lie, and Leahy is a liar extraordinaire. The guy is a pathological liar. I welcome the report and call on the president to immediately consider implementing the recommendations that can be achieved without legislation. Meanwhile, you got Pelosi out there telling the president, stop worrying about legislation. Just use executive authority and implement immigration. That CHAG, I tell you what. Encouraging this president to break the law is kind of like going up to that kid in Newtown and handing him a couple of extra guns before he goes to school. I mean, it's ridiculous. She's encouraging him. I mean, that's an incitement, ladies and gentlemen, to violate the law. If I said to you and made a statement to you that you should go rob a bank, I could be held criminally accountable for that. They would call that I'm an accessory and I incited violence or I incited an action that was constrained by law. Why isn't somebody going in there and putting a nice set of silver bracelets on Nancy Pelosi? She is telling the president that her recommendation is that he should break and violate the law. Here's one of the cool parts that came out of this thing. The panel is actually recommended that the FBI end the use of another tool in the arsenal against the war on terror, the FBI's dreaded, notorious, evil national security letters. Now, if you don't know what those are, these are the ones that allow agents from the FBI to walk into any place in the country and hand you a letter. And it's a national security letter. And what it says is, we want the records in your database about so-and-so. And then at the bottom of it is a gag order that prohibits you with criminal prosecution from ever speaking about your receipt of the letter. In fact, the gag order is so restrictive that if you call that person whose records you have that they're looking for and you notify them, hey, the FBI was in here the other day and they asked for your entire data file, you can be criminally prosecuted and placed in prison. How does that jive with the First Amendment? How does that jive with the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment? I mean, what the heck is going on here? They walk in and they hand off these national security letters, and they can get your telephone, your banking records, your credit card records, your library records. They can look up what books you took out of the library. They can look up what you looked up while you were using a computer at the library. I mean, it's absurd. They can go to Visa and say, hey, we want every credit card purchase that Joe Blow has made. They can go to your cell phone carrier, your home telephone carrier. They can go to the alarm system company that checks that monitors your alarm. And if they've got camera surveillance in your house, they can pull down the video and the camera video. I mean, come on. Here's the kicker, folks. They used these letters 21,000 times in 2012. They issued 21,000 of these letters on Americans in 2012. Here's the worst part. The FBI could not provide a single success from all of these warrantless searches that they did. Not one. $21,000 letters issued in 2012 alone. God only knows how many we've had so far in 2013, because the number's been ratcheting up every year. 21,000 times in 2012, they issued not only a national security letter that allowed them to seize and take possession of someone's personal records for an investigation, but not one single case, not one single successful case came out of all of that abuse. They issue, according to this report and Clark, 60 national security letters a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, asking for the records of phone companies and other organizations. And they do it with no oversight from Congress whatsoever. Nobody's looking over their shoulder. Nobody's questioning them. Hey, why are you doing this? How many of these letters have you issued? Who are they going to? What is this person accused of? Show me where you can find justification for that in the Constitution. I got to tell you, one of the other recommendations they came out with is that Obama has already that he should take the position of the head of the NSA and, number one, make it a cabinet level position so that it has to be so that person has to be confirmed by the Senate, much like you would confirm a judge or whatever, or the head of the Federal Reserve. And then the second issue is they said that should be split. The NSA and the U.S. Cyber Command should actually be two different jobs, not one. And, of course, he's already rejected that. He says, no, I'm going to keep it as one job. And he's already rejected the idea of making it a cabinet level position. I'm assuming his excuse is that he's not going to be able to, get the person in that he wants, right? So I don't know, but I mean, it's pretty. Look, guys, we are literally living here in a, we're literally living here in a dictatorship at this point. If you haven't figured that out, so. Interestingly enough, the guy from the UK Guardian paper, Glenn Greenwald, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm having a real hard time. I need more coffee here. Glenn Greenwald, he came out and made a comment on this, which was very intuitive. Yesterday, or I should say Monday, a court ruled that the Obama administration with the NSA program is violating the law, that it's a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights, and that judge actually ordered an injunction against the NSA doing it and then stayed it pending an appeal, which he knew was going to come. But interestingly enough, Greenwald had a completely different take on this, and I applaud his view of this. Here's what he said. How is it that the United States government can prosecute somebody, meaning Edward Snowden, and threaten them with a decade in prison after they expose programs which we now know are unconstitutional, according to our own courts, and which the president's own advisory board say is extremely dangerous? The only reason these reforms are possible is because we know about them. And the only reason we know about them is because Mr. Snowden courageously came forward and told us about them. Bingo. That's why you've heard me say before, Edward Snowden is not a traitor. Now, interestingly enough, Clark came back and responded to that. He says that nothing in the report gives the justification for Snowden's actions. In fact, what he actually said is this. What Mr. Snowden did is treason, was high crimes, and there is nothing in what we say that justifies what he did. Well, with all due respect, if what Snowden did is high crimes, then we need to utilize that same standard, that same threshold for Barack Obama, Eric Holder. I mean, the list goes on and on. Nancy Pelosi, Lois Lane or Clark or whatever the heck her name was from the IRS. I mean, where is the same standard applied to your cronies? Well, we can't do that. Of course. God forbid you fairly apply the law. What law? I know, that's the problem. You don't believe there is any law. That is the problem. You believe that you're above the law. The whole lot of you. I'm telling you. Oh, well. This is an administration of lawlessness. This is as close as we have ever seen to a thugocracy or a degenerate fascist dictatorship in the United States. And I'm here to tell you, we have not even scraped the surface of the dirt of this administration. How do I know that? Well, for starters, and I'm going to talk about this in our last segment, for the record, the court came out the other day and said that Obama was also guilty of hiding documents related to his appointments, related to foreign aid that he gave away in 2010. I mean, what is up with this administration? This is the one that was promising to be the most transparent administration in the history of the presidency. This is the least transparent administration we've ever seen. All right. I want to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Divya Verma. You know who you are. I am extraordinarily grateful and appreciative of what you have done, and I'm going to leave it at that. I just want to make sure that I give proper credit where it's due to a few folks. Metro Healthcare PC in Maryland, Greenbelt, Maryland. God bless you and thank you. Keith Baker, the Glass Depot in Houston, Missouri. Keith, man, you're an awesome dude. You and I are going to talk. I will call you. I went to our P.O. box yesterday and got the mail. So, all right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about our third topic, 2014 NDAA, the new NSA to replace the old. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for it with this deal. It's not going to be pretty. The new NDAA is going to replace the NSA of old. You watch and see. This will be tyranny rising from the ashes of the old NSA as a phoenix. It's going to be ugly. And, of course, Congress is just going to push it right through with a rubber stamp. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're in our third segment this morning. Today is December 19th. That would be a Thursday. I just want to give a shout out to some friends who have really stepped up to the plate and been very gracious about support for the program. Rachel Castle in San Diego, God bless you, dear. You didn't even give me a return address, so I can't send you a Christmas card. But, you know, she just sent me a quick note. Excellent show. I discovered you after hearing about you on Jack Spirko's survivalpodcast.com. Thanks for what you're doing. It's very important. I'm now a daily listener. So, Rachel, thank you. God bless you, dear. Keith Baker, the Glass Depot over there in West 421 West Highway 17 in Houston, Missouri. Keith, thank you very much, and God bless you, and Merry Christmas to you and your family. I appreciate you. Folks, we get, mail in from time to time, and I just like to pay tribute where it's due. And Keith really is, I'm very impressed with him. Thank you very much, Keith. I'll give you a shout. Also, our friends over at the Metro Healthcare. This is a professional clinic in Greenbelt, Maryland, and I want to thank the folks over at Metro Healthcare. If you are in Maryland area and you would like to, you need to see a good doctor, get over there to see Divya Verma and Metro Healthcare PC in Greenbelt, Maryland. And thank you very, very much, all of you, and God bless you. And I can't tell you how much we thank you for your efforts and your support, your encouragement. That really, I don't want to say too much, but let me just tell you, I am touched and I am humbled. I really am. Thank you. All right, let's hit on our next topic. The 2014 National Defense Authorization attack. Well, I guess that's what it is, right? 2014 National Defense Authorization attack on America. That's what the new NDAA should stand for. I am so disgusted with our Congress. They have been putting in place a string, and I got to tell you, folks, many people don't realize it. They think all these bills kind of stand on their own. Well, let me tell you what they actually do. They stand on the shoulders of the last bill, and then they implement greater tyranny with every climbing foot they move up. This National Defense Authorization Act is building on the 2012 and the 2013 National Authorization Acts. The National Defense Attack on America, the new definition for NDAA. In fact, I'm going to write that down. I like that. Sorry, I'm writing. I can't write and talk at the same time. Here's the problem. The first NDAA gave them the wherewithal, the ability to create an unconstitutional abuse of the liberties of America. There's a great article out there, by the way, I'd like you to see. It's on policymic.com. And I'll put this in the body of the YouTube video description screen because I want you to see this. It says 7 big things every American should know about the 2014 National Defense Authorization Act. National Defense Attack on America, I mean. Last month, the House passed H.R. 1960, the newest iteration of the National Defense Authorization Act attack on America. And basically, this is the way they couch this to you and the way that they misrepresent this is they say, well, this is only to fund our military overseas. This is the funding package for the military. I mean, how else are we supposed to pay our soldiers? If we don't pass this, our soldiers won't get paid. You know what? That's such a false narrative. You could pass it, but you could strip out the unconstitutional provisions in it. We don't mind you paying our soldiers. What we do mind is when you put in there brand new surveillance systems, when you create a brand new agency that no one's ever heard before, that's completely built in secret, when you set up plans to be able to take Americans off the street like a gulag Soviet system and bury them in a federal holding facility somewhere where they have no access to an attorney, they have no access to the courts, they don't know why they're being held. You claim you don't have to tell them. You don't even have to tell their family that you've got them. And they can be held indefinitely until the end of hostilities in the war on terror, which now has declared the United States of America, plus every other ounce of surface area on the earth, including the Antarctica, to be part of the battlefield on the war on terror. And the reason why I say that these things build over and over and over again is because every year they add another brick to the wall. This year, the brick is this brand new digital database that they're building, which is going to create a whole nother agency that will betray us and strip us of our rights. They're going to use the information they've currently collected from the existing NSA, and here's where I think we're going to see this go. I just know that these snake oil salesmen in the NSA and the FBI and Congress and the administration are going to say, okay, so we have to implement these recommendations that came from our panel. And so what we're going to do is, for all intents and purposes, we're going to disband or take away the NSA's authority in some way, shape, or form. But we're going to create the new surveillance agency called the Conflict Records Research Center. Now, this is a Department of Defense authorized agency. Now you're starting to get it. Because the war on terror is a DOD project, and the United States is now part of the battlefield. And they can store, develop, build, and create a database of, quote, captured records. Now, the definition of a captured record is, and these are any records or files that are obtained, quote, during combat. Well, they're not defining combat, but combat could be, risk the game to these people, right? From entities that are, quote, hostile to the United States. The problem here lies that what we don't have is a definition for hostile, and we don't have a definition for during combat, and we don't have a definition of the belligerent act that you have to commit to become subject to this. So basically, they're going to create this brand new agency that's going to store all of this data, and they can store all your records. And the records can actually consist of personally identifiable information, And they can get it from individuals, countries, and organizations that are now or once hostile to the United States. So they're going to have records that they can go back on and determine, oh, this guy was hostile when he attended a protest, and he was arrested for refusing to quit protesting or whatever. That could be termed a hostile act. This person went to Washington, D.C. to protest anything. It doesn't even matter what it is. It could be protesting the ASPCA, for crying out loud. And your hostile act was refusing to leave, and you stood there on the steps of the courthouse or the Capitol or the Supreme Court or whatever you did, and you were there for an anti-abortion protest, let's say. And they told you to break up and disperse, and you didn't, so they arrested 50 of you, and they dragged you off. They gave you a ticket for $100, and they let you go. Oh, wait a second, that's a hostile act, and you have now or once been hostile to the United States. That's your belligerent act. Get it? Oh, man. There's an enhancement provision in here for heavy military spending. $552 billion in total defense spending, $88 billion of it going directly to war expenditures. By the way, it was only a couple of months ago that we found out that the black ops money that goes to the NSA and the FBI and the CIA and all of these, less than visible phantom groups that are out there doing whatever they're doing and beating the living tar out of us while they completely ignore the real enemies, was $52 billion. I mean, come on, folks. Give me $52 billion, and I, too, could change the world. You got to be kidding me. That was only for a year. Give me $52 billion, period, for life, and I could change the world. These guys get $52 billion a year, and nobody knows where the money's spent. Oh, shh. Hush, hush. Nobody knows. There also is an implementation in here in Section 1011 through 1014 of the continuation in the war on drugs. Why is the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, an attack on America, addressing the war on drugs? Oh, that's right, because our military is now basically a police force. Because they want to figure out how they can utilize our military domestically for law enforcement. That's really what it comes down to. It extends every anti-drug program that's currently in operation. I mean, look, guys, we have been at the war on drugs for how many decades now? And it has done absolutely nothing except load up our prisons and penalize all kinds of people for the most nonsensical, mundane little stuff. I mean, look, y'all know, if you're a long-time listener to the program, you know I did federal time for a gun beef that wasn't even legit, right? I got set up. If you don't know the story, I've told it before. You can go back on YouTube and type in my story under my search page, and you'll see it. And I met people in there that were in there for having, grams. That's like you could fit that in the cap of a jar off of the cap of a small jar. And they had gotten 10 and 20 and 30 years for that. I mean, let's be honest here. We have 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison population due pretty exclusively to the war on drugs. 50% of all inmates in the federal system are in there for drugs. And I think the number is actually about 60 or 65 in the state systems for drugs. These people, once they come out, they're marginalized in our society because with a felony, you can't go get a job. You're always looked at like you're a second-class citizen. The felony hangs over your head. And since background checks are de rigueur now for an employer, even if you look like the great candidate, and they say, okay, this guy looks good enough, so let's do the final investigation and make sure we've done our due diligence. Up pops your felony, and the next thing you know, they say, you know what, we found another candidate, but thank you very much for your submission. We'll keep your resume on hold. Blah 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 blah. You get pulled over, and the cop approaches your car with a gun drawn because you're a prior felon. Your family, who lives with you, is barred from exercising their Second Amendment right because you live there. Can't have a gun on the premise. No one in my home can have a gun. Now, how's that fair to them? This counter-drug program that they're funding includes a provision specifically tailored to the deployment in Colombia to aid in drug interdiction in Colombia and other South American nations. The approval of a government block grant that supports anti-drug efforts in other countries, too, is vague, and it costs millions of dollars, and we don't even know what they're doing over there. And the truth is, now we know for a fact that the NSA has been distributing a lot of the information that they get to the DEA, and then telling them, listen, you got to run your investigation in parallel, because you can't explain in a court of law that you got this information from us, because we're not supposed to have it. I mean, we're doing wholesale surveillance on America between the NSA and the FBI and the National Reconnaissance Office. Have you ever heard of the NRO, by the way? Oh, okay. Go look that one up. The National Reconnaissance Office. These are the people who are in charge of all the satellites. Did you know about a year and a half or 2 years ago, they approved the idea that local law enforcement, your county sheriff or maybe your police chief if you're in your city, can call the NRO up and ask them to task a satellite on a specific location so that they can do satellite surveillance locally. I mean, they got so many of them up there, they don't even have a problem doing it. Hey, we need you to read the license plate on that gray Chevy on 4th and Main. I mean, you got to be kidding me. And you don't think we live in a police state? Holy smokes. Most people have never even heard of the National Reconnaissance Office, by the way. So the goal here is essentially to get around what they knew to be coming because of the backlash on the NSA. The national backlash, the international backlash. I mean, let's be honest. Everybody in every other country is flipping out. Our allies are mad as hornets that we've been monitoring their phone calls and their private secure channels of communication between their embassies and their countries and their ambassadors and all the rest. I mean, I get it. Every country spies on every other country to a certain extent. But when you're sitting there listening to, the private conversations of a president of an ally, there's something questionable about that. We would be outraged if we found that somebody was doing it to us. I mean, it's one thing if you've got a declared enemy. I get it if they're listening in on the phone calls of someone that we've declared war on. I get it if there's someone that we've declared to be an enemy of the United States of America. I don't get it if it's the president of Germany or Brazil or Uruguay. I mean, or France. I mean, anyway, the real truth is here that there are a ton of things in these National Defense Authorization Acts that nobody's reading. These are multi-thousand-page documents, first and foremost. They get passed every year, and your traitors, your senators, and your treasonous, your representatives in the House, these people just approve this thing with a rubber stamp every time. In 2013, we asked them to withdraw the aspects of the original 2012 NDAA that allowed them to utilize this indefinite detention model, turning us into, for all intents and purposes, a gulag police state, and they refused. Can you believe it? The Republicans are the ones who have started this, folks. So let me tell you, if you think for a moment that, and I'm tired of this partisan nonsense. I was on a conference call the other day about this Convention of States issue, Article 5, changing putting some constitutional amendments in place by essentially going around Congress, which the Constitution authorizes us to do, because we can't get these people to vote term limits because, of course, they won't vote for something that affects them directly, right? And so I was on this phone call, and some of the people that were on this phone call, as it started to get towards the end, they couldn't help themselves. They had to keep butting in and saying, well, I'm not going to tell my Democratic rep. I'm thinking to myself, and these were state legislators. And I'm thinking to myself, man, you're like, I couldn't believe the lack of education and knowledge that was in that crowd. I was stunned, actually. And I was stunned by the pettiness and the lack of professionalism and the lack of true patriotic interest. All they gave a darn about was how it affected their party. They didn't care about whether or not it was good for America. I'm not saying everybody on the call because I didn't hear everybody talk. But those people that did speak up, there were a number of them. Not all of them who spoke up either, but there were enough. And I heard them saying stuff that I was just stunned at. The problem here, ladies and gentlemen, is not... The problem is that this party mentality of duopoly parties has led us to this position where we have a National Defense Authorization Act, an NSA, where we have an IRS out of control, where we have literally thousands of administrative agencies that are passing literally tens of thousands of regulations a year that are killing our country. And all they're interested in is, well, what's in it for my party? I've written something called The Pact. And I'm still not finished with it, so I'm not ready to expose it yet. But when I do, and I'm going to have it ready for this election year, it's going to blow the doors open on this thing. Because it's going to, I'll tell you why it matters. It will eviscerate party loyalty. It will, over a couple of short generations of elections, destroy the power of parties. Utterly. If there's a lawyer out there who would like to help me work on this, or someone who's written legislation before, I'd love to talk to you about it. You're welcome to contact me. You can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. I need someone who's got some legislative skill and writing and that kind of thing. This is going to be an agreement that a candidate will sign. The Political Accountability Contract and Trust. And any candidate who's unwilling to sign one should not be elected. I don't care what party they sit on. All right, our next topic and our last one for the morning is going to be Obama keeps losing in court. So what's up with this, and how do we get rid of this tyrant? I mean, over and over and over and over, the courts keep finding he's acting unconstitutionally. And Congress is sitting there saying, let's dalliance a little more. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. All right. We're back. If you're interested, you can catch us live on our website, of course, but you can also capture our program live on Spreaker. That's like speaker with an R. And if you can catch it on patriotfb.com, where we stream the show live there on a audio link. But you can also download the Spreaker application into your personal tracking device. I mean, your cell phone. Yeah, the one the NSA has made so cheap for you to own. Didn't you ever wonder why? Oh, that's right, because it's your personal GPS tracking device. Yeah, that's it, yeah. Remember John Lovitz? he used to do that character, the liar. Anyway, your personal tracking device is a great way for you to listen to America's Voice Now. You can download the Spreaker application. So if you're on iPhone or Android, it doesn't make any difference. You go to either iTunes or you go to, if you're on Android, you go to the Google App Store or whatever the heck it is, and look up for an application called Spreaker. That's Spreaker. Download that application into your phone and then do a search under Michael Evans, America's Voice Now. Once you find that, you can literally go into that application, and as soon as you pop it open, it will show you live all of the different applications or all the different programs, and you can listen to them live if I'm streaming them, or and it'll actually tell you it's live, and you can listen to it live, or all of the previous ones are podcasted, so you can listen that way if you're driving in the car, whatever. So anyway, Spreaker's a great way to listen to the program, especially if you don't want to watch my ugly mug. I know I got a face that was made for radio, and, I know I'm scary. So I want to talk this segment about something that is really bothering me and should be bothering everybody. I mean, the obvious question here is, what the heck is going on with the fact that these courts keep finding over and over and over that Barack Obama has violated the law? I mean, there was a court not so long ago that found that he violated the rules or the Constitution when he declared Congress out of session in order to put into place the head of the National Labor Relations Board. Now, Congress wasn't really out of session. He declared them out of session just so he could pass this thing without getting their approval, because he knew that they weren't going to approve the sycophantic mouthpiece he was going to put into place. And the court said, "You abused your authority, Mr. President." Now, the other day, the court also found, again, that the president has violated his authority, and he did so because he withheld documents, and I it's beyond me what the heck is going on with this thing, because he withheld these documents that were related to a foreign aid distribution that he did. And they don't really say what that was, and we don't really know because, he's withheld the documents on it, right? Hang on a second. I'm going to type this in. Foreign aid Obama court. So here's the problem. These courts constantly are finding, and by the way, you also have the House and the Senate who found Eric Holder guilty, and they found him for obstruction, basically, on the Fast and Furious project, and they found him guilty both criminally and civilly. Criminally. Now, this guy is the head of law enforcement and the Department of Justice. And they found him criminally and civilly liable for withholding documentation from a congressional committee. We have numerous instances where Barack Obama personally, and many people in his administration, in fact, there was just a guy who got sentenced to 30 years yesterday he worked for the EPA and he kept saying he was working for the CIA, and he's embezzled over $1 million taking these fancy vacations, and his boss never even called the CIA to say, hey, you know, Charlie over here, he keeps telling me he works for you, and, we're paying him, and he's disappeared for 18 months. We're still paying him, and he says he's doing work for you. What's up with that? I mean, wouldn't you do that if you were the boss of that particular individual? If you were the manager of that department? Wouldn't you call up the other company that this guy says the other division of the same company you work for, and say, could you just confirm his employment for me? Because we're paying him and you're paying him, and, he keeps sending us these expense reports. And why are we paying expense reports in the EPA for CIA work? I guess I'm stumped. That wasn't a red flag? The courts in Egypt have filed documentation against him. Now, we don't have an answer to that. And, of course, it's an international court, and we're not going to give that any credibility or credence. I get it. But the problem is that we have literally criminal activity over and over and over on the part of this president, in the sense that these courts are finding over and over and over again, including the NSA the other day. The court found that it's unconstitutional, violation of the Fourth Amendment. That's his project. It may have started under Bush, so, okay, let's just blame Bush now and get it out of the way. I mean, the point to here, folks, is that we have a president who operates completely lawlessly. That's my son in Afghanistan. Let me call you back in a little bit, Kai. I'm on the radio. I'll be off in about 20 minutes. All right, bud. We have a president who operates completely outside the scope and the boundaries of the law and the Constitution. And I don't understand why we cannot remove this guy from office. Now, I know that there are constitutional limitations on what we can do. I know that the problem with impeachment is that in order to impeach him, we'd have to get the consent of the Senate, which, let's be candid, we can't even block a budget bill in the Senate. So that ain't going to happen. And Eric Holder, the president's boy, would have to be the guy who would appoint a special prosecutor to prosecute this tyrant. Well, the problem with that, of course, is that he's not going to appoint someone objective, and it's going to be a whitewash. Not to mention it'll take him years. They're still investigating the stuff that happened the first year he was in office. They're still investigating Fast and Furious. Themselves, of course. They're investigating themselves on Fast and Furious, and still after all this time haven't come up with an answer as to what really happened. So you've got problems with an impeachment. Even though the polls came out the other day, and 57% of the United States thinks that he should be removed because he's a danger to our nation. They consider him to be the greatest danger to our nation that exists. And I don't disagree. Multiple times the courts have found him to be operating beyond the constitutional boundaries, and he has lied. Men are dead. We have Benghazi. Let's not forget that. We have Fast and Furious, where at least one American is dead. It's actually really two. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Mexican nationals have been killed so that they could try to sway public opinion about firearms. He's passed executive orders that clearly cannot pass muster. He has violated the spirit of the Constitution, and he's clearly violated his authority as president by making unilateral changes to Obamacare he has no authority to make. He's sitting there and saying, I'm going to either implement certain law that I want, or I'm going to avoid certain laws along the lines of immigration with the DREAM Act. I mean, is this a republic or is it a dictatorship? That's the obvious question. We are living in a dictatorship. And the problem is that we're trapped. We are trapped. There's no recall provision constitutionally. Legally, constitutionally, there's not a lot we can do. We can't really wait to vote him out, folks, because it's only 2013, going to go on 2014, and we're stuck with this character for another 2 years. 3. He's doing so much damage to our nation. He's doing damage to our nation in a host of different respects. Internationally, our reputation is mud. The world is laughing at us. On a domestic front, and the enemies that we do have out there, the physical enemies that we have out there, they're laughing at us and taking advantage of us at the same time. China is looking at us like we are so weak that they acknowledged yesterday that they actually did, and they were the ones who created almost an international crisis by pulling up one of their ships right in front of our ship and stopping it right in the middle of the ocean and making our guys shift direction to go around them like a game of chicken with battleships. Trying to create an incident, an international incident. Our enemies, and China is an age-old enemy, and don't let anybody tell you any different. Russia's Putin is sitting over there licking his chops trying to figure out, and let me tell you something. These guys are actually waiting for an economic collapse. Because if our own government doesn't get us, they will. If you don't think that those two wolves are not going to be at our shores waiting for an opportunity to jump in and seize the resources that are in this nation, including the slave labor that is made up of you, and the natural resources, the oil, the gas, the gold, the silver, the natural resources that are in our soil, our water. I mean, if you didn't hear about it the other day, there's a whole uproar going on about why are we selling the water out of the Great Lakes to China? We're selling the water. There's a global drought going on in 60% of the planet, and we're selling the one resource which is precious to China, a known enemy, sworn enemy. Anybody in Congress who tells you they're not your enemy should be removed. Recall them. If you can't recall them, find something out and give them an option they can't refuse. Resign, or we're going to expose your secret about your girlfriend or your dirty land deal, or, let's play the same game the NSA plays on us. Coercion. Find somebody that can testify against the John McCain, against a Harry Reid, who now says he's going to stay until 2021. Could you imagine? Harry Reid, next to Obama, is got to be one of the most dangerous men in America. And the two of them together are they're like the dynamic duo from hell. I mean, this is insane, ladies and gentlemen, and our hands are tied. Constitutionally, there's not a darn thing we can do about it. You know, if they ever do get this Convention of the States thing together and this Article 5 methodology, I mean, we're down to a couple of basic handful solutions here. We can't impeach him. The Senate won't do it. Roberts, the Supreme Court Justice, he'd have to be the judge. I'm not sure I trust Roberts at this point to do anything. I don't trust any politician to do anything for any reason, for anyone, under any circumstance. Everybody's got an ulterior motive, a hidden agenda, and none of it involves you or the betterment of the country. All of them. It's out of the question to consider, should our military do something? Because, one, our Constitution prohibits that. And we don't live by the ends justify the means rationale, because if we're going to do that, then we become that which we are trying to fight against. You cannot win by utilizing evil to accomplish good. That does not work. Call it karma, call it natural law, call it God's law, call it whatever the heck you want. But you cannot achieve good with evil. And violating our Constitution and violating the intent of our Constitution, even if you could find a legal loophole to allow it. And by the way, even if the military came in and said, okay, we're going to take this guy out of here, and who are we going to put in his place? That's what I thought. You see, the truth is, nobody can save us from ourselves but us. And we're not ready. You know why we're not ready? Because even if today, let's just assume for argument's sake, that we could say without any problem whatsoever, legally, ethically, morally, and every other way, we can replace the president tomorrow morning. Who would we replace him with? Let's assume, for argument's sake, we could replace the entire White House administration, all of Congress, and eliminate every federal agency in the country. And replace all the judges. Who would we replace them with? We'd have a giant vacuum while we sought new candidates. That's why I have advocated all along, and I continue to do this, and I say it over and over and over and over and over and over again, that the Constitution Party, the Libertarian Party, the Tea Party, the people who are interested in the Convention of the States and the Article 5 Convention, the Article 5 Constitutional Amendment Convention, should be banding together to find qualified candidates to pre-qualify and pre-vet them, so that in the event we have an opportunity to do that, we've got an infrastructure in place that we can say, great, this piece fits into that puzzle just perfectly. 2 senators in every state, a representative in every district or region. You've got a group of people that will replace the judges, and you need 5,000 true patriots who will stand up and say, I'll do the job. And they have to sign an agreement and a commitment of contract that says, if at any point in time I violate any of the constitutional parameters, I'm not saying I will resign. I'm saying here is my pre-submitted resignation letter, and all you've got to do is sign and date it. And I'm out. Instant recall. We don't even have to put it up for a vote. Then you can begin the process of putting elections back in place to put other people in. So it's a temporary group of people that step in to fill those seats, because you can't have a vacuum. That's what the problem was in Egypt. They made a mistake. They didn't have anybody to go in and fill in those seats. And the military stepped in to fill the vacuum, which nature abhors. So the military stepped in, filled the vacuum, and guess what? Now it's a military dictatorship. Can't have that either. Not even for a brief millisecond. So until America is ready to get busy finding qualified people. Listen, I advocated the solution already. The Tea Party, the Libertarian Party, all of these grassroots organizations out there, all of these Take Back America groups, coalesce, put together an organization, throw some money at it, and the sole function of this place is to do this. Put ads in every local newspaper, put ads on every television station that say, seeking qualified candidates for a new constitutional republic of the United States of America. Call 1-800-PATRIOT. That's it. You'll get all the interviews you can handle. You got to pre-qualify them, vet them, make sure they're legitimate. And that's what that group should do. And it should be made up of a committee of all of the different interested parties. So nobody's got their agenda. Find those candidates and say, okay, you're vetted, you're qualified. We know that you don't have, something in your background that's going to be a problem for you. We know that you stand on constitutional principles and you've signed the contract with us, the pact that says, if you violate any of these constitutional principles, you're out on your rear and we don't even have to say anything. All we got to do is say, you got 48 hours to pack your bags and get out of Dodge. That's it. But you see, the problem, ladies and gentlemen, is that everybody's looking for the magic pill solution. Well, if I just take this pill, it'll all go away. This is not going to be easy. And it's going to take planning. And it's going to take people who will look at this in a longer term than to just say, well, I can solve this in 30 days or less. This isn't a television show where by the end of the hour, the amazing has happened and the crime has been solved and the guy is caught and he's sat there and whatever in court, confessed in court. That's not the way this is going to work. Stop looking at it from the way that you've been trained to look at it and start looking at it from a different angle, from a different perspective. If you want to communicate with me about it, I'd be more than happy to do that. You can send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. mike@americasvoicenow.org. I invite your participation. The truth is, until we have made a decision that we've had enough, and we're going to take the hard steps to do what we've got to do to get rid of these people, and we're going to be willing to pay whatever that price may be in order to get rid of them, and that includes some uncomfortable, painful steps and some financial things that have to be done, and everybody's got to give up a little bit of ego, and everybody's got to give up a little bit of this my way or the highway mentality for the benefit of the nation. That's the only way it's ever going to work, folks. How do we get rid of this guy? We have an entire secondary government waiting for us to remove not him, the whole lot of them. All of them. One fell swoop. This is what's called flushing the toilet. That's a radical thought, you think? I don't disagree. But so is it a radical thought that we should turn this, allow this to become a fascist dictatorship. Or have you forgotten that's the end goal? You can't have it both ways, folks. And there's no white horse riding up with a shining suit of armor on it. It's us or it's nobody. All right, you've been listening to America's Voice Now. This is going to wrap our show for the day. It's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. TGIF. You can communicate with me by sending me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. If you're interested in advertising with us on any of our radio programs, please send me an email. We have advertising banners on our website. We need to drive some revenue, folks. So if you're an advertiser, you got a national business, a local business, a regional business, we'll work with you. We're easy to work with, and we've got some great advertising programs that will definitely help boost your business. So by all means, if you're interested in supporting us, one of the ways that you can do that is by sponsoring the program and sponsoring what we do. So send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us at americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/americasvoicenow, youtube.com/americasvoicenow, and patriotfb.com. All right. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Download our Spreaker application. We'll see you tomorrow.